We've been fighting a long time, and we have all lost so very much, so many loved ones gone. But you are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. You have no idea how important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Ave Maria Stella, Dei Mater Alma, ad semper Virgo, Felix te porta.
Welcome, everybody. Steve with Sensus Fidelium coming at you with a special guest. Well, they're all special, I guess, but I got to come up with something new every time we come in. Daniel O'Connor. Connor,
yes.
Connor. Daniel O'Connor.
Either one.
Speaking people. I'll get it right the sixth time. Sorry. Author of the book, The First and Last Deception. Among other books. We'll promote the website later. But Daniel, thank you for coming on. How you doing? And glad you said yes.
Steve, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Honored to be here. I've loved your channel for a very long time. So thank you. Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
There's been something going on for the last, I don't know, couple of years, starting with some stuff flying in the sky, some non-HD TV films of aircrafts that no one knows about. So there's been talk of little green-headed monsters, and you're all over this.
Oh,
and
I saw a couple aliens to come and save us.
You know what I forgot to do? I forgot to grab the clip of the guy going, aliens.
Right. The meme, that's the
meme.
I'm not saying it's aliens, but
not saying it's aliens.
That's me, I guess. Except the opposite.
So everybody probably knows that. We're going to talk about aliens, UFOs, aliens, movies that have aliens, because that blew my mind when you brought that up. But anyway, there's books, even Catholic books are written about aliens. You got priests out there talking about aliens. It's how did anybody talk about this prior to 2025? I mean, is this new?
Oh, okay. We got some history to go through. So there. Now you're going to have to interrupt me, and I will not take the slightest offense anytime, because if somebody doesn't stop me, you never know how long I'm going to go.
I can go pop some popcorn if it's needed.
You can. All right. There's a few stages here in this grooming. I call it a grooming process that society has been afflicted with for some time now. We're reaching insane levels of it in just the past couple of years. You know, we've got Congress now basically coming out and saying, yeah, there's aliens here. And this is all, in case anyone's clicking on this, not knowing, the background here, I do not believe in aliens at all. This is all a deception. There are no aliens. Only man bears the divine image. God has made that clear in innumerable ways, which I'm sure we'll get into all those theological details later. But what's happening right now? I mean, you can't ignore that this is a massive issue now. When you've got the floor of the highest, most powerful platform in the world in U.S. Congress openly saying this, we need to address this. And Catholics need to be on the forefront of discerning this. And there, as you said, Steve, there's been a number of Catholics pretending to discern this, but as they've done that, there he is. As they've done that, they've succumbed tragically to the very deception itself under this perverse idea of openness, this perverse idea of not limiting God. And I agree, we can't limit God, but what the person who is really limiting God is the person who says that God is too stupid to mean exactly what he says in divine revelation. And I believe that if we look at what God has said in divine revelation as authoritatively interpreted by the magisterium and as infallibly understood by the Sensus Fidelium, it's so fitting, because that's one of our most powerful arguments here. Mm-hmm. On this channel is the very thing that this channel is named after, the Sensus Fidelium. The sense of the faithful is infallible. And the sense of the faithful is the unanimous consensus of all the faithful at a given period of time. If all the faithful agree on some matter of faith or morals, it's true, period. End of discussion. Why? Because for it to be otherwise would be for the Holy Spirit to be absent. And that would be blasphemy to say the Holy Spirit is absent from the church. Anyway, all that later. So we've got a few stages here. We've got what's going on now it's coming to a head, this great deception. But really, if you look back to when it all started, we've got a few stages in that as well. And the opening of the stage that we're in now of this deception, and ultimately it goes back to the Garden of Eden itself, which is why I called my book The First and Last Deception. I see in what we're confronted with now the rumblings of, or the reoccurrence of, the same type of deception that the devil deceived Eve with in the garden. But the current, iteration of it, this I see as a penultimate iteration of it, came in 1947, June 24th, 1947, actually, the feast of St. John the Baptist. John the Baptist, the forerunner of Christ, the chief prophet, heralding the imminent coming of the Christ. And the devil, he always apes the things of God, right? So the devil were to send a chief false prophet, heralding the coming of Antichrist. What better day for him to choose than the feast of John the Baptist, June 24th? What happened on June 24th, 1947? Well, we had Kenneth Arnold saying he saw flying saucers. Something like 3 days later, we had Roswell in New Mexico. I almost said Roswell, Georgia. There's a number of Roswells, but Roswell, New Mexico had the supposed alien spaceship crash there. And
their minor league team is named the Aliens. They have a hat. Their minor league team is the Aliens.
Are you serious? In New Mexico?
Yeah, you get their hat. There's a minor league team that sells the hat as Alien hat.
Oh, they capitalize on this hugely, and there's this big festival there every year. I should go to it sometime just for fun. But and yeah, it's just, and it's silly. And I'm not trying to be some lame stick in the mud. We can have fun with this. You can watch an alien movie every now and then. I'm not saying you're going to hell for any of that, but just if you dig into what's really going on, you do stumble upon the real darkness. If you step back and look at this grooming process that started in 1947, June 24th specifically. So after Kenneth Arnold on June 24th and Roswell a few days later, that was the beginning of this new perverse era of the ET, the UFO. We have been constantly told since then that aliens are here. And that my speculation, whenever I speak about the future, I'm not a prophet. I don't have any prophecies. I don't have any predictions. I just have speculations. I speculate that the 75 to 100 year reign of Satan that Pope Leo XIII saw. All sorts of people have speculated about this before, and I've done so before, and I've been wrong before. I thought that this reign must have started with like World War I, which means I was writing about this back in like 2010, and I thought maybe there would be some major thing with the 100th year anniversary of World War I in 2014, or communism in 2017, the 100th anniversary of that. And then those anniversaries came and went. And I got to thinking and discerning more about this. And it occurred to me that the devil doesn't need an unusually long leash for war and political deception and like he's always been doing those things. The horrible circumstances of the 20th century with geopolitical, technological advancements made those more destructive than ever before. But if we look at when these false signs and wonders, 2 Thessalonians talks about the strong delusion and the false signs and wonders that will come with it. If you look at when those really started, those started with the UFO deception. Since 1947, we've been inundated with these claims that aliens are buzzing our skies, abducting people, and we've got this explosion, especially in the last couple of years since U.S. Congress really started talking about this explosion of expectation that the, quote, day of disclosure is about to come. So my speculation is that if you look at this conversation that Pope Leo XIII witnessed between the devil and Jesus, that Jesus basically, kind of like the book of Job, he says, okay, you have 75 to 100 years of a longer leash of greater power over souls. And if indeed that started in 1947, it could reach its climax anytime now. And we've certainly been seeing the trends progressing since then.
Yeah, one cool thing you bring up in the book is I'm sure anybody's watching and seen TV shows and gone, after you read this, yeah, that makes sense. I probably was thinking that when I saw that, but just pretty much deleted thinking at the time and just said, "Oh yeah, this works." It was like hyperdrive. You'll go through a rock. You know, it's not like matter goes around or anything like that. Star Trek going through, or you were mentioning about UFOs taking off and these guys videoing things and just going from here to saying that, well, they probably would have been exploded in the impact that they needed or the propulsion they needed. One doesn't exist, or probably would have destroyed something around them if they did this. So it's fun to see that you bring in common sense and physics and overall science in that part. Going, well, here's how they would have had it done it if they say this. And you see these videos of like, oh, they just disappeared, or this went here and then here, then here, then here. Like, well, the laws of physics don't explain that this cannot happen. So this is not just a book on aliens are bad, shouldn't do aliens. Like Mr. Mackey over here is like, don't do drugs or anything. There's thought process that goes into it.
Yeah, and we got to attack this from every critical thinking angle we have, and science is a very important one of those. And I'm glad you brought that up, because we can assess the claims of this UFO deception from a purely empirical scientific standpoint. We can discern that way that whatever's happening, it's not physical. So I've got a chapter on this. I won't try to do all the calculations and stuff right here off the cuff, because I'll botch them. But I did them carefully as I was researching the book. If you look at the claims that are constantly made for the last almost 80 years, since 1947, with respect to UFOs, you see things happening, so allegedly happening, that are not merely contrary to technology as we know it. They're contrary to the most basic laws of physics, meaning physics, physis, nature. Mm-hmm. And if the laws of nature appear to be contravened, you're not dealing with material phenomena, whether human or supposedly alien. You're dealing with a matter of spiritual discernment. For example, constantly we hear fighter pilots saying, okay, yeah, this UFO, the size of an aircraft carrier, it accelerated from stationary to Mach 10 in a couple milliseconds. All you need to do is put Newton's laws on that. And no, quantum mechanics and relativity doesn't change any of this, not at all. Put Newton's laws on that. You can do it yourself easily if you know high school math. 1/2 mv squared, that's the kinetic energy of an object. You can calculate it yourself based upon its velocity. If you have something accelerating or decelerating that massive and that fast, you're talking about an amount of energy that makes Hiroshima look like nothing. And you could say, okay, well, maybe these ultra evolved aliens just have this technology. First of all, no, you can't. Secondly, even if you could say that, that doesn't change the fact that to decelerate, to slow down an object going that fast, that quickly, that energy needs to be expelled. You can't just make that energy disappear. That would need to be expelled to its environment. So if even 1% of these UFO claims were true about these insanely massive objects instantaneously accelerating and decelerating, that would have boiled off all of our oceans 80 years ago, the amount of heat that these maneuvers would have generated. And the UFO believers, even the supposedly good Orthodox Catholic ones, they would have us believe that this has been happening constantly for the last 80 years. It's nonsense, even from a purely scientific standpoint. And that doesn't even get into the even more powerful arguments, which as Catholics we understand are the theological ones.
Yeah, the one you end up quoting Adam Schiff, in 2022, U.S. Congressman Adam Schiff during a House of Representatives intelligence briefing implied ET belief by claiming the UFOs move in ways, quote, that are inconsistent with what we know of physics. Using multiple instruments, shed light on one of the world's most enduring mysteries. And you bring up that, like, just there's no way. And you did like you said, the numbers in here from 2020 traveling at Disney 40,000 miles per hour. Talking about the dwarf galaxy that's 25,000 light years away. Indeed, only how many zeros? 1, 2, 3, 4, 15 zeros and 5 of the universe planets that reside in our own galaxy. But we're supposed to believe all these guys come from all over the place that we don't know about, and they traveled this far. And there's a movie. I brought this up when we were talking. If anybody's ever seen it, Ad Astra. And usually Hollywood's all about, we'll get into Hollywood, about showing ET and that there are other things out there. And is it Brad Pitt, his character, he's flying to Neptune to find his dad. And one of the gray lines in it is, there's nothing out here. And he's been out there for decades trying to find his dad, and nothing. He's by himself in the middle of space.
I meant to watch that preparing for this, and I forgot to, but I'm going to watch it again soon because I saw it when it came out. And I admit it wasn't really my kind of movie because it's kind of brooding, and I'm like a 10-year-old with my likes in movies. I like action, but its message was so good. You're right, because it was so contrary to almost every movie you look at since, frankly, since War of the Worlds. Well, that was more on that later. Almost all the movies on this topic have been grooming us to accept this ideology about aliens, but this is the one that doesn't. And spoiler alert, but the funny thing is, it's like the movie was such a good refutation of the supposedly good Christian and good Catholic theologians that I'm arguing against. They base their theology on this, and this has been the case since the Enlightenment, by the way. So we've got one phase of the deception since 1947, but the other phase of the deception actually started with the Enlightenment. This idea of the principle of plenitude, where the Enlightenment philosophers and theologians, they identified this need for everything that possibly could be the case to be the case in the material cosmos. It was this immanentizing of the eschaton. It was this, they couldn't have a heaven-oriented mindset, so they had to have a material universe be the context of everything. And Immanuel Kant was big on this, all sorts of Enlightenment philosophers. They insisted that the heavenly bodies just had to be filled with aliens. And ironically, this was put forward by them as a necessary Christian thesis. Like, you're blaspheming God if you don't believe that all the heavenly bodies are filled with aliens, because you're limiting him. And of course, now we know through science that none of the bodies in this solar system have aliens. And of course, as I'll argue, we can also know that none of them anywhere do. But this idea, and Ad Astra has this guy, played by Tommy Lee Jones, this supposedly devout Christian, who destroys his family because of his obsessive need to prove that there's aliens. Why? Because he saw that as part of his twisted Christian theology. And that's one of many reasons why I'm so zealous against this. It ruins the whole Christian, Catholic, Orthodox theological perspective about God and man and what God has revealed about his relationship with us. So he dedicates his life to going out there to Neptune or whatever so he can get a better view of the cosmos to discover aliens. And all he gets is a bunch of nice pictures of other planets, which are great. I'm a big fan of exploring the cosmos with our telescopes. That's wonderful. It's God's creation. Why? Because the heavens declare the glory of God, as the Psalms say. They do that perfectly well on their own without us needing to taint them with sci-fi myths. Thomas Aquinas, he refuted who was maybe it was Maimonides. It was either a Jewish or an Islamic philosopher of his day who basically said that the heavens had to be sentient because the heavens declare the glory of God. And Thomas Aquinas said, that's ridiculous. The heavens declare the glory of God in the same way all created things do, because his glory is manifested through his creation, not because they're out there like us, knowingly, rationally praising him. So Aquinas really refutes the ET deception before it even started in the Enlightenment. And that movie did pretty well too.
That was interesting about the other religion. I didn't know Islam had a ET embracing type deal mindset.
All the non-Christian religions, and it's like every angle you analyze this through, the truth exposes itself so quickly. But you've got to have the desire to know the truth on Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism. Basically, every major non-Christian religion is completely open to aliens. Christianity is the only one that if you embrace it fully and correctly, you'll realize it completely rules out aliens. And that's yet another reason I think this is not just a deception, but the great deception. Every non-Christian religion will embrace this lie that there's aliens here to save us. But those who stick with the Orthodox traditional Catholic Christian faith, they'll realize this is not true. This is a lie.
Since we're already talked about one movie, let's go ahead and just get into Hollywood right here and talk about the grooming process, because the history, yes, you can read. There's a ton in here on from the beginning from Immanuel Kant all the way to Neil deGrasse Tyson, and then everyone in between. But most people probably don't have a clue about those guys, or I see them every so often saying something on TV or news, but they all have seen Third Encounter with Third Encounters, E.T., Mars Attacks, you name it, Transformers, all these movies that get into the air. You want to, the way you brought it up, like Third Encounter I just forgot this darn movie. 2001 Space Odyssey. I was like, wow. And then just that subject alone was going, okay, I see where you're going with that. I can remember seeing the scenes that you're describing, or Close Encounters with the Third Kind. I had no idea that he was 33 years of age in the movie, and all the stuff that was going around inside it. And
it's so deliberate. And I found myself like weeping sometimes writing this stuff, just as I was doing the research, realizing, this has always been my hunch, but as I did the research, realizing how clear this grooming process has been. And look, I'm not trying to be some lecturing snob who's just saying you can't enjoy any fiction. It's fine to enjoy some ET based fiction. I'm not condemning that categorically, but at the same time, we have to discern the overall trends of what's been happening and see the methodology behind them. And when you do that, it becomes really clear what they're after. Scripture says that the time is coming when men will no longer listen to the truth, but having itching ears will accumulate teachers to their liking and wander into myths. And the myths that are prophesied for the last times, you just got to ask yourself, what is the predominant storyteller today? The predominant factory of myths? And there's not even a close second. It's Hollywood. They are the myth makers today. So if you want to try and grasp what Scripture is warning against, and then St. Paul also says have nothing to do with godless and silly myths. So what has Hollywood been up to since the onset of this in 1947? Well, to understand that, you actually have to look to the very beginning of the same trend, which was pre-Hollywood, pre all of this. If you go back to the Enlightenment, as I was saying before, Voltaire, one of the most twisted, messed up Enlightenment thinkers of all of them, the most vicious anti-Catholic Enlightenment thinker you could imagine, pretty close to the most viciously anti-Catholic at least. He was actually the one who started all of this. He wrote the first alien-based work of fiction in Western civilization. It was called Micromegas, and it was a short story, but he wrote it about alien. This was the 1700s, and he writes this story about aliens from some other solar system visiting Earth. And the moral of the story for Voltaire is to denigrate St. Thomas Aquinas. And it's fascinating. So he's got this alien who's like 10 miles high or something, and he comes to Earth and he's got to look at us through a microscope. It's weird. But one of the philosophers that this alien stumbles upon on Earth says to this huge alien, the answers are in St. Thomas Aquinas, and the whole heavens, the whole universe was actually made for man, which of course is the truth. That's the Christian truth. That's the Catholic truth. Everything was made for man. Well, God became man. He didn't become an angel. He didn't become a dog. He didn't become an alien, because there are no aliens. He didn't become anything else. God became man because man is, as St. Francis de Sales says, the perfection of the universe. We are, we're the last thing God made in Genesis. If you have a Christian anthropology, this is very easy for you to understand. But ET fiction from the very beginning was designed to overthrow and mock and denigrate this Christian Catholic understanding of cosmology. So we got Voltaire, and then fast forward to the next century, we've got H.G. Wells, this virulent anti-Christian atheist, socialist, Marxist, who people venerate today. Why? Because he's the father of science fiction. Science fiction's great, right? Well, again, I enjoy science fiction at times as well. I'm not categorically condemning it. But H.G. Wells was a nutcase. He was one of the most evil men of his era. H.G. Wells, too few people know this. He was in a lifelong adulterous affair with Margaret Sanger of Planned Parenthood. And he said that this woman is the greatest woman in the world, and that her movement, Planned Parenthood, would, I can't remember the quote exactly, but it would like have a bigger impact than anything else. He said something to that effect. And in one sense, that was true. Planned Parenthood has murdered who knows how many countless millions of children since then. So this guy was a twisted degenerate in the worst sense possible. He invented science fiction. And the first big alien science fiction was War of the Worlds. But then come 1947, we see the switch from aliens as a threat, which, by the way, that's its own psyop. Mm-hmm. You can't just believe in aliens and believe they're a threat. Aliens don't exist. That you're just going to fall for the same trap, even if you believe they're a threat. Anyway, it gets even worse, though, after 1947 with Roswell and Kenneth Arnold, because we see this idea of aliens as some sort of salvific or even divine entity. We've got what's it called? The Day the Earth Stood Still, early 1950s, with the benevolent alien coming to save us from ourselves because of nuclear apocalypse. And then we had the 2008 remake of that coming to save Earth from global warming. And then we move on to 2001: A Space Odyssey in, 1968? And that movie has both the ET and the AI deception embedded within it. And I think they're two peas in the pod, which is why I've got them both in the subtitle of the book there. But this idea that that aliens are the spur of our evolution. Think what are the 5 notes of that movie? Dun 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 dun. Is that and I'll just I'll keep singing here if people need purgatory time off. But it's something like that. I'm sure everybody remembers it. Those notes, those famous notes that everybody across the world now, thanks to Stanley Kubrick, who is another degenerate anti-Christian psychopath, but as all the sci-fi people were. Just wait until we get into Steven Spielberg.
I know. Just wait. He's just warming up.
You see, this is why I have to say, you just got to stop me because I'll go on forever. But a little quick coffee sip here.
Well, while you're eating coffee, here's the quote on Sanger. Quote, and plotted her nefarious organization as one which, quote, will grow to be 100 years from now the most influential of all time in controlling man's destiny on Earth.
Wow. Yeah, it was even worse than I had recalled. So he must have said that at some point in the beginning of the 1900s. Now I'm forgetting exactly when these people lived and died, but that's like an anti-prophecy that's kind of come true in the opposite way that H.G. Wells intended. He was an anti-prophet if there ever was one. And he, again, you got to look at, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, as they say. H.G. Wells, the father of science fiction, he set the direction that unfortunately it's largely taken since. So we've got that. And with Kubrick coming with 2001: A Space Odyssey, those notes and the clashing cymbals, and I'm sure it comes right to your head if you're watching this, because we've all, I watched all these movies also before I understood what was going on here. Mm-hmm. The song itself is called, it's actually from Thus Spoke Zarathustra.
Yeah.
Nietzsche wasn't a composer, Friedrich Nietzsche, but the composer, and the name is escaping me at the moment, but the composer made this song about Thus Spoke Zarathustra, where Nietzsche says God is dead and man is the Superman, and we need to rise above good and evil, willing only the will to power for the sake of the will itself. Why? Because Christianity is slavery. It's 100% the platform of the Antichrist, which Nietzsche is unabashedly promoting. And Stanley Kubrick is completely acknowledging that. He's giving 2001: A Space Odyssey, he's presenting it as the Nietzschean overthrow of Christianity. Why? How? Through aliens and AI. The aliens, and we don't even see them because they're supposed to be like godlike. Mm-hmm. They give these monoliths, the big black rectangles. They turned us from apes into humans, which the whole evolution deception stuff, of course, weighs big into this as well. But even leaving that aside, we have the next phase, which is now, or false prophecy. That was supposed to be back in 2001, when we get the next big stage in evolution, space travel. And there's the monolith on, now I can't even remember if it was Mars or the moon. Was it one or the other? They had the monolith was either on Mars or the moon as we're space traveling. And then we go to the next monolith, which is right outside Jupiter. And that's even the next stage, which is AI super consciousness. So Kubrick, people, it just boggles my mind when we even have good Catholics singing the praises of stuff like 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is more or less explicitly rolling out the red carpet for the Antichrist under the AI, ET, UFO deception. And then all the movies that came after that furthered it. We got Spielberg with his Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the very next decade, portraying the aliens as these ultra benevolent entities that are coming to spur us on to the next level. And E.T., directed at grooming the children just several years later. Steven Spielberg is completely open in how messianically he views aliens and AI. AI, he made the movie called AI, Artificial Intelligence, in the year 2000. But the what really concerns me is that right now, as we speak, in fact, it was filming just close to me in New York. Spielberg is working on what is probably going to be his biggest film yet, because he's been, and there's even secular news stories. I saw one yesterday, like, what is up with Spielberg's silence? Because he's been saying nothing recently. He's just been working nonstop on this next film that's going to come out next year. Some people are saying it's going to be called The Dish. Other people are saying it's going to be called Disclosure. But it seems quite clear that it's going to be his next big UFO movie. And all the speculation is it's going to be his big push for UFO disclosure, because he is, for decades and decades now, he has been so open with the fact that he views these ETs messianically.
Yeah, the one thing about you bring up the ET part about everyone crying, and that was one of the things to get the emotions on ET side. Yeah, there's
probably it's the same with me when I first saw it. It's this great story. It's all emotional, but if you look at what's really going on, and I charted out in that chapter in the book, you realize how much Spielberg is grooming us. He's grooming us to associate ourselves with ET, to place our love and our longing in this hope beyond hope that ET will come. And it seems so innocent. And people are going to laugh at me for even saying this, because they say, oh, Daniel. And in fact, one of the big Where Peter Is guys, Mike Lewis, he's been mocking me about this for months now. He says, oh, Daniel and Father Ripperger say that this is a problem or something. Yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem when we've got culture grooming us to place our love and our longings in one of these diabolical myths that has time and time again proven itself to be diabolical. And there's all sorts of diabolical myths in Hollywood. But what makes this one uniquely dangerous is that this isn't just some myth about someone, like rolling in radioactive waste and getting superpowers. That's silly.
Yeah.
But this is joined to reality. We also have news reports. We also have congressional testimonies. So this myth is much more of a trap than any other myth, because people by the millions, hundreds of millions, are buying into it in reality.
Literally buying into it.
Yeah, quite literally. Yeah.
Don't worry about Mike. Mr. Lewis probably mocks his own mother. So
probably. Yeah.
And then what was the other one? I guess I don't have a heart. I don't think I remember crying during ET. I think I'm the Grinch on that. Maybe.
How dare you?
The Atari game.
Go watch it again and cry. Otherwise, you're not a real man.
I hated the Atari game. It was the worst game ever made. You remember the 2600, the Atari game on that?
No, I don't remember that one.
You fall into a pit. You can't get him out of the pit. You had to reset the thing every time.
I got into video games with the original Nintendo and Mario in the late 80s, or what was it, early 90s.
It shows my age, the Atari 2600. There's also, Contact was a big one. That was especially atheistic.
Contact, if I even get started with that. So Carl Sagan, and it's funny because whenever you've got an evil movement, they're always at war with themselves even more than they're at war with the outside. And that's more true with ufology than anywhere else. They hate each other. All the people in ufology, there's all these different camps in it. They're constantly at each other's throats, trying to get each other thrown in jail. It's frightening looking at the dissension within ufology. But anyway, there's a lot of UFO people who hate Carl Sagan because Carl Sagan was the chief pop scientist of the late 20th century, and his religion was aliens, but he didn't believe in UFOs, rightfully so. he was in some respects, he was a serious scientist who rightfully said, this is bogus. You're claiming these things came from another solar system and then crashed. You guys are making no sense. So he's absolutely right in all that. But all he did was replace the UFO ET ideology with the SETI ET ideology. SETI is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence through radio waves. So they believe SETI is a big, huge government endeavor. And the hilarious thing is, I was in a movie that came out in theaters last year and another guy in the movie was the head of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, Seth Shostak. And I like my arch nemesis. Anyway, I've got a whole theory on why that happened. That'll have to be for another video. But so Carl Sagan was big in SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. And he wrote this book, Contact. And it was basically his magnum opus. It was his master plan for how aliens would save us. And it was made into a major Hollywood movie that came out in 1997. It came out just several months after Sagan died, and it was dedicated to him. It was his life. It was his baby. It was his life project. And the whole movie is just a completely carefully anti-Christian manifesto that replaces Christianity, replaces God with these ultra advanced extraterrestrials that give us knowledge, not through prophets, not through divine revelation, but through radio waves. In every aspect, Sagan, through this movie Contact book into a movie Contact, he perverts all the basic elements of Christian hope and he replaces it with extraterrestrial hope. And it's so perverse and it's so sickening, but it really has become kind of a game plan for one faction of the ET savior people.
Yeah, I remember of all the movies, I remember that one the most. I forget the actress's name, but it's the big circle. Yeah, it broke, and then they ended up building a new one, and they picked her because she was an atheist or something. Something about her.
Yeah, it's all about it. It's all an exoneration of atheism, but it's so perverse because they're trying to like make atheism this alluring. Atheism is so boring. Christianity is exciting. Atheism is boring. But Carl Sagan tries to make atheism really exciting by making extraterrestrials this subtle object of hope and this quasi-supernatural expectation. And yeah, what was that actress' name? She all I know is she's a degenerate. I guess that doesn't narrow it down, does it?
Yeah, that's a big wide range of what's her name?
Yeah. Jodie Foster, was that
Jodie Foster? It was Foster,
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Clarice.
She's so unlikable, and that's the movie wasn't exactly a big hit, but it's since its release become one of those cult.
You had
whatever they call it. The movies that they have an outsized influence far beyond
their called like Office Space and things like that.
Right.
But I mean, you have Independence Day. There was a big bash 10 years ago with Will Smith. And, you even bring up Star Trek and Star Wars.
Star Trek gives a whole, and I think Star Trek is much more dangerous than Star Wars. I mean, again, I'm not condemning you if you've enjoyed this stuff. I've enjoyed this stuff too. There's nothing wrong with that. It's entertainment. The problem is a lot of people turn it into a lens through which they view reality. And like, there's one guy, I'll avoid naming names, but like almost every video on his channel is trying to turn Star Trek into a theology, and it's completely twisted and perverse. And Star Trek is more dangerous than Star Wars because it's not set in another galaxy far. I mean, that's dangerous in its own right. You got to be careful. But Star Trek is humanity's future, right? And I don't know this very much about this stuff, but Star Trek tries to pretend it's really scientific, and it's all pseudoscience, completely pseudoscience. But everything that a demon would do, you can basically pretend that there's a technology that could explain it through some sort of Star Trek myth. And that's exactly what one of the prominent career lay apologists does in his channel. It's like video after video after video. It's either Star Trek or Doctor Who. And it's all this diabolical deception. But because he's a big Catholic apologist that you're supposed to just agree with everything he says, it just flies as acceptable today, unfortunately.
I think I know what you're talking about now. I was trying to think of what you're talking about, but I don't really watch many other Catholic shows or halls. Usually stick with secular ones, and usually the secular guys don't buy into any of this stuff. And
Right,
you
right.
talk about I know about the congressional stuff because of the secular guys going, what are they setting us up for? And then you think about all the obviously the deep fakes out there. You can whatever, question everything that's on screen, because they might be able to create some kind of, like the blue screen idea, create an invasion of some sort, and everyone's going to be like, my eyes see what that's going on. I guess gets into like, or the AI part of the book in a sense too, and everything ties together. But yeah, they're setting us up for something. He believe us. Where's the pentagram, same thing, is telling us we see this stuff, even though it's a terrible, pixels and all this. You can get a $400,000 billion camera that you can see the booger up a nose of a starfish up on Mars, but in front of them we got this, grayscale, whatever. Oh, that's supposed to be a UFO.
It's a few pixels.
Yeah. Believe us. Just trust us because we know we're smarter than you. We just believe us. Don't question. Bang. So yeah, it's like, what are they setting us up for? And you talk about grooming, and you're right. They're grooming us right for something that most people are going to go, yep, we're getting invaded, and it's all over again from the remake of the Tom Cruise movie,
Right.
World of Worlds.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is you're going to fall for the psyop almost as badly if you believe in aliens but see them as a threat, because because in fact this is demonic. You can't fight demons with weapons. You can't fight demons with. You need to become a saint. You need to become a devout Catholic. You need to stick with the sacraments. You need to pray the rosary. Those are the only weapons that are going to work against what's coming, not whatever psyop is presented to us. And there's the most dangerous thing is to see the ETs as a savior, because that's blatantly pseudo-messianic. But there's also huge dangers in believing that ETs exist and are coming to attack us, because that would be the ultimate false premise for the biggest crackdown on civil rights in human history. You think COVID enabled them to crack down? Wait until you see what rights they can take away from you if they say there's an ET threat. So you need to just completely reject either side. You need to reject those who say ETs are coming to save us, and you need to reject those who say ETs are coming to harm us. There are no ETs, but there are demons. And we know from 2 Thessalonians that a strong delusion will come with false signs and wonders. And, several minutes ago, we were talking about what's scientifically impossible. Now, strictly speaking, even the demons can't do what's physically impossible, but they can give the impression of having done so, because they can manipulate molecules in the air even to make it seem like a body. Father Ripker talks about how the demons can temporarily assume a corporeal form. So it's not actually an illusion. Your senses really are seeing something if the demons temporarily assume a corporeal form. But because it's more or less ephemeral, it's only constituted of however many grams of molecules in the air they're manipulating at the time. It can move in ways. It can seem to instantaneously accelerate or decelerate, when in fact it's almost nothing doing that. So the demons are not actually violating a fundamental law of nature, because that would be a miracle which only God can do. But they are still giving the impression of having done so, which is why you can have someone like Adam Schiff, a U.S. representative, say the laws of physics as we know it are being violated by these things. Well, no, it's the demons deceiving us. The demons can, Father Replica gives a few classes of them in his book Dominion. They can do that. They can temporarily assume the corporeal forms, but they can also mess with light or sound as it passes through the air from object to recipient. So your senses. The demons can easily make you misinterpret some natural phenomenon as a UFO by messing with the light or the sound as it goes through the air to you. They can also, of course, mess with your own senses or your own imagination. So there's several avenues that the demons have, and you don't have to go about worrying. The devil's on a chain, of course. I believe that he's on a longer chain now. I think we are in those days of preparation for the strong delusion, but it's still chained. So you don't have to go about terrified of he's not behind every rock, but you do have to understand what he is ontologically capable of. And it just so happens that all the supposed proof we have of aliens, every single shred of it, is something that's within the power of the devil to bring about. The devil can't literally incarnate himself, though. So all these claims about alien bodies, alien craft, those are the things we have no proof of. Not at all. We have tons of proof of people seeing certain things and witnessing certain things, all of which are things that the devil could easily bring about. So everything we have proof of is something the demons can do. Everything we have no proof of is something the demons can't do. That's not a coincidence. It's because this is a deception.
Yeah, it's like I was immediately thinking of Independence Day again when you talk about proof, because in that thing they have the underground bunker and nobody knew it. The president knew about it. Only this one guy, the DOD, knew about the underground bunker and the spaceship and the alien bodies down there. And no one, the old joke about what you think, it was $12 million for a hammer or a piece of toilet paper and all that. So they make the humor part because people do joke about that stuff. So then people think maybe there is an underground thing somewhere in New Mexico or all this. And they got, I mean, do they really have it sawed off that there's like nobody past this point? Is that a real thing?
Yeah, I mean, that's so much of this most of this is completely made up. And this idea that there's this whole shadow alien part of our government. Yeah, our government wastes a lot of money, but it's actually not hard to see where that wasted money goes. And it's not that we don't have trillions of dollars going to alien spacecraft under Area 51. Like my thesis is very falsifiable, which is actually something that gives it more strength. You know, think about a thesis that can't be falsified is actually a weak thesis. All you need to do is present to me an alien material, and I'm refuted. And that's never happened, and it never will happen. And in fact, years ago, I put a challenge up on my YouTube page. It's been viewed tens of thousands of times since then. I got to look up to figure out which video I put it in so I know how many times exactly. But I said, all these UFO people out there, they say that they're in possession of UFO debris that's indestructible. So I put out an open challenge to them. And I'll put it out again here. Come to my garage. I don't have any ultra special tools. I'm kind of like a handyman of sorts. So I've got the basic stuff. Come to my garage with your indestructible alien material. We will both live stream the event onto YouTube. If I can't destroy it, then you're right. There's aliens. You have alien material. But I know that I can, because I know I can just, like, it's not hard to destroy anything if you have basic tools. I don't have anything crazy. So if any UFO believers are out there who say that, and like Stephen Greer is one, he says that there's thousands of these indestructible UFO ET artifacts out there. Just bring one of them. One of them to my garage. Well, you can prove yourself to the world. Yeah. Take your most indestructible thing. I'll destroy it in my garage before your audience on the live stream. There are no indestructible alien materials. There are none. And that's so obvious to those who want to see the truth here. They look at the things that the demons can easily replicate, and they pretend that's proof of ETs because they don't believe in demons. And St. Augustine, talking about the strong delusion, he says basically that this will come, this strong delusion prophesied in 2 Thessalonians of the false signs and wonders of the man of lawlessness. He says this will come precisely when men become ignorant of the devil's power. That's today. People don't even believe in the devil anymore, much less understand what he's capable of. And that's why he saves it for today, his biggest onslaught of false signs and wonders yet. And yes, I admit, since 1947, there has been a avalanche of these astounding claims. And I'm not claiming all these people are liars. I'm not going to claim thousands and thousands of people are all lying. I'm saying that they are describing a demonic delusion.
Yeah, like you bring up in Dr. Mack's Abductions in the Name of Jesus, they're seeing something, but they might not know what it is. So they immediately go, well, it's got to be, we'll bring up the meme, aliens. It's got to be aliens. So
they don't want to believe in demons. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they don't want to. They don't want to say that part because then it goes in. If they acknowledge that, then they have to acknowledge there's God. And then throws their whole life out of loop. So if they say aliens, then they say, well, we just get abducted. Sometimes we got to watch out for UFOs and bright lights and things like that. They can still live whatever they want.
Exactly, and it's just so transparent. If you're just willing to give the simple analysis you just did, we've got endless testimonies of the abduction stops immediately upon invoking the name of Jesus, and it's too obvious for me to even say what that implies. An alien would have no reason to flee at the name of Jesus. A demon would. So it's just so. But
if aliens exist, they say, "Who's that guy?"
Right. Exactly. Like, according to the Catholic ET promoters out there, our job is to evangelize the aliens. So they should love hearing about Jesus, but instead they flee at the name of Jesus. It's just. But you've got to look at what the the representatives of the movement are saying if you want to assess it honestly. And that's a kind of a commitment I made to myself and my audience as I wrote the book. I'm not going to go finding the fringe voices in order to try to make my stance look stronger. I'm not going to find just the craziest people saying the craziest things. I'm going to look at the open and clear statements of the most indisputably prominent representatives of ufology and ET belief. And you mentioned John Mack. He is the undisputed scholar of alien abductions. And if you look at what his own research shows about so-called alien abductions, it matches exactly with what any experienced exorcist would say about diabolical oppression, obsession, vexation, and possession. It matches exactly. And it is. We have here on the screen the CE4 research group. They've collected hundreds of testimonies of people who have described a so-called alien abduction, but then suddenly it ends when they invoke the name of Jesus. And again, it's too obvious to even say what that implies, because any Christian will realize what that means.
But then we got Catholic apologists saying that there could be, I mean, these are Catholic books being written that there's maybe many mothers of God, maybe many Marys out there. Or you told me, I didn't read those books. I read your book that quoted those books, and almost dropped your book. Going, how in the world does somebody that purports to, be a Catholic can even think that, much less write it and then defend it and then try to put evidence behind it? And then nobody really comes out. And I think you're like maybe the only one to bring it up, because everyone else was doing interviews with him going, right. No one wanted to push back, or did anybody push back? Again, I didn't watch any of the interviews, but how did that go on? How do you sit there
Well, that's the problem, is there's some pushback from some of these interviewers who, like, their Catholic instincts kind of rightly rebel against this, but then they just kind of let these people convince them it's okay. Because and the arguments are all bogus, and that's part of the reason I wrote my book, is that that's yet another reason I believe this is not just a deception, but the great deception, because this thesis of aliens, you invite it into your theology and it poisons everything. It poisons your Mariology, it poisons your Christology, it poisons your eschatology, it poisons your protology, the philosophical or human anthropology. It poisons every aspect of Christian Catholic theology with this one premise that there's all sorts of other civilizations also of rational creatures made in the image of God, because then there has to be multiple salvation histories, and then there has to be multiple incarnations and multiple redeemers and multiple saviors, and then you have to have multiple mothers of God. And it's just that one idea of aliens, you invite it in, it infects everything. And yes, I'm well aware of the fact that there's all these theologians doing theological, sophistical acrobatics to try and make it make sense, and it doesn't work. That's why one of the chapters of my book is on how it doesn't work. You can't make this work with Catholic dogma. Multiple mothers of God, for example, as you brought up. What's not assumed is not redeemed. And if you've got, of course we know that God became man through the Blessed Virgin Mary. So naturally, if there's going to be alien races, they're going to have their own redeemer, but that means he's going to have to become man. If he's going to become what Alpha Centaurian or whatever, he's going to need an Alpha Centaurian mother as well. But of course, we know from Catholic dogma that Our Lady is absolutely singular, supreme, unique, unsurpassable. People, that apologist I alluded to earlier, he goes on one of the biggest Catholic YouTube channels out there, if not the biggest, saying, and he's calling me out by name, because I'm saying, no, there's only one mother of God. I didn't think this was supposed to be controversial for me to say there's only one mother of God. But he's calling me out, and he's saying that I'm completely misunderstanding Catholic teaching.
Even if you got it wrong, you thought it was wrong. He didn't mean to say that. You're still going, how did you even think that? How did you even go with the thought that I'm getting, there's many mother of gods?
Right.
Not even going touching that area in the sense. I didn't get to that point to say maybe you misunderstood me. Better clarify.
Right, I'm misunderstanding. Like when Catholic dogma says all things, I'm wrong because I believe that means all things. I'm supposed to believe that when Catholic dogma talks about everything, it just means like Earth, and then there's everything outside of the stratosphere is a whole different theology. Apparently, you can't make Catholic theology work with that. That's limiting God. That's the person putting God in a box. I'm not putting God in a box. I'm approaching divine revelation on my knees with open ears and open heart, saying God means what he says in divine revelation. He's not lying to us. He's not deceiving us. When he says all things are X, that means all things are X. It doesn't mean that there's all sorts of different all things that aren't included in when God says all things. So when Catholic dogma, for example, speaks of Our Lady as the highest creature even possible, for which it does in Ineffabilis Deus, where Pope Pius IX proclaimed the dogma of the Immaculate Conception. It's not just that she was immaculately conceived. That's certainly true. It's also that, and this is in all sorts of different magisterial documents as well, that Our Lady is the highest creature even possible, and that she far surpasses all the angels and saints. Far. So she's far above all the angels, all the saints. She's the greatest creature possible, and yet the ET promoters want me to agree to this view that says, oh no, but she's only one of many other mothers of God, of all the other alien races out there. You're inviting this idea in, and by inviting that idea in, you're actually devaluing and depriving Catholic dogma of all of its emphasis, because you've just put an asterisk on every single line of Catholic dogma. The asterisk being this only applies in a certain sense to a certain time, to a certain place. And if that's your approach to Catholic dogma, you're not going to remain in the faith. You're just waiting for the next thing to deceive you out of it.
Yeah, nice. Just read the book. Don't get the other book, because sorry, I don't want to bring his name up. I mean, he's a good dude. Probably just don't want to cash in on that one. But read this one, and your mouth will drop on some of the quotes. Going, there's no way Daniel misquoted him. There's no way he wrote that right. It's that nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then if you want to look it up in the original book, and you'll see it's right there. And it's, and I mentioned a couple of, Christology would actually be the most obvious. Even, of course, the primacy of Christ, that would be the absolute core of Christianity, that Jesus is the only begotten Son of God. But the ET promoters, almost all of them, including the ones I'm alluding to here, they believe in multiple incarnations of God. And they say, oh, no, that's okay, because St. Thomas Aquinas says that that's possible for God to assume multiple natures.
Yeah.
You're completely abusing Aquinas when you say that. He's not saying that's possible theologically. He's saying that's possible logically. When Aquinas talks about something being possible logically, the whole point of that is often to contrast it with what's actually theologically true, right? Because that changes. Like, God could have consigned all of us to hell. That's logically possible. That was within his rights. But instead, he wants us all to be saved. And we're supposed to contrast. Like, the whole point of Aquinas doing that is we're supposed to contrast the logical possibility with the theological reality, because that makes us appreciate God more, makes us love him more. And Aquinas does not at all say that it's possible for God to assume multiple natures in order for us to think maybe he did that. No, it's to increase our appreciation for Jesus being the only begotten Son of God, the only incarnation of God. It's absolutely anathema to the most basic dogmas, the core of Christianity, to believe in other incarnations of God.
A friend of mine is a big Thomas guy too, and when he read the Summa, he goes, I could agree with all the refutations. I'm a heretic. But he knew how to read
well, right. Right.
Yeah. He goes, those are really good arguments. I think I agree with those.
I know. Yeah, never stop reading one of the articles of the Summa at the at the objections. You'll be a heretic pretty quick.
But you got in a little spout with Father Spencer. He's a big promoter of all this stuff right now too.
I had no idea.
Yeah, he's big on it. He's got a big platform. He's like EWTN will push, and he's an authority. He's a priest, and you bring up priests bringing this up from all the way from Teilhard de Chardin. Now we got a modern doing that, just all over. Just, well, what if aliens don't? Was one of them I tried? I was going to pull it up, and I was like, forget about it. It was talking about if aliens don't abduct us, that just shows their mercy or something like that.
Yeah, and that's I had always people just attacking me for that. Look, I love Father Spitzer. He's done great work for the faith. I had no intent at all to denigrate him. All I did was I posted a little clip from his recent show where he says some crazy things that need to be acknowledged as bad. And I said he succumbed to it. And I had these wannabe Catholic upstarts just at my throat because I did that, as if I just like attacked his person or something. It was weird. But these people, they know, and this happens every time I have to call out the ET deception. I get these Catholic Inc. types who just want nothing more than to climb the ladder of the corporate Catholic world. They just come after me with everything they've got because they know who they're winning brownie points with when they do that. And look, guys, it's only going to work for so long. I'm not going to stop. Every time you attack me for this, I'm just going to come out even stronger against it. So keep it up by all means. To those of you who are trying to silence me, it's not going to work.
Well, I was just wondering, I didn't even see it until I think you retweeted it or reposted it or somebody brought it up, and I was like, and then made me look up you and then look up what he's talking about. He's got a book on this. And he sent me what you got. Let's talk about this. So in a way, it's good for these guys to bring stuff up because then expose the light on it.
Exactly. Right. It brings more attention to this. And that's, should I say who Father Spitzer was? I don't want to bring any names in that you don't want up, but should I acknowledge who Father Spitzer was on with on you? So Father Spitzer was on Lila Rose's YouTube channel. And I actually haven't even watched the whole thing yet, but I watched some clips and I realized this needs to be brought up, how much of a problem this is. He's talking about the possibility of aliens not only existing, but being here. And it was really bad. And again, I love Father Spitzer. He's done great work for the faith, but am I allowed to criticize him? And is he God? I don't think he's God. I think I'm allowed to criticize some things he says. But anyway, I brought that up.
No one else brings it up. Somebody's got to bring it up.
I know, and it's like I'm begging more and more people to do this, and I hope more people will start calling this out because I can't be the only one for much longer. But anyway,
because I like Jimmy Akin, but he gets into this too.
Yeah, Jimmy Akin is always attacking me for giving my side. But anyway, it's thankfully, and as you said, this actually ultimately works out to the good, and it did in this case. God works all things to the good. But my calling out Father Spitzer in that case wound up getting far more exposure than Father Spitzer's original video with Lila Rose did. So the hunger for the truth on this topic is out there, but the only thing the mainstream professional Catholic types are giving is the pro ET side. And I'm trying to change that. I certainly can't do it alone. So if you're watching, please join the fight. And thank you, Steve, for joining the fight. Thank you. And if you've already done it before, Father Ripper, and I didn't even realize that Father Ripper some time ago had a video against some of this stuff. But
he did a conference a couple months ago, and
a couple months ago he gave a real good talk against this. But I think he might have said something years ago, and it was hard to find, and I wasn't able to find it when I was researching my books. But Father Ripper has spoken out very strongly against this, so please look up his stuff. But yeah, the more we have this getting into the mainstream with the so-called whistleblowers and U.S. Congress talking about this and Hollywood, this is only going to get bigger and bigger. And if those of us who have the traditional Orthodox Catholic perspective on it are too afraid to give our side, and we're going to be drowned out by those who are just saying, oh, yeah, Catholicism is fine with aliens. They're probably coming here to save us, and it changes everything. My thesis is that's rolling out the red carpet for the Antichrist. So that's kind of a problem.
Yeah, setting people up for a massive, they just brought it before, psyop. And then you add in the AI that's coming out. I mean, I use AI, and not for what a lot of people other do, but I don't use it to think, or hey, Gronk, tell me what to think, or do this, or hey, Siri, I hate Siri on there. I turned it off, make sure it doesn't go up, and because I don't like having Skynet listening to my, what's going on. It's already tough enough for I say like something, or someone says kale around me, and I get 15 emails on paleo diet, things like this. But you got Stargate with all these satellites in the sky now. You got Palantir just came out a couple of days ago. Yeah, Nova Harai talking about AI, Dan Brown talking about AI from 2017. These guys are really putting all in the AI Bible. I mean, it's literally going into an AI route. So there's that big chapter you have on AI at the end.
It's part and parcel. It's really the same deception, actually. So, and in fact, more and more, they're not even talking about ETs and UFOs. They're talking about NHIs, non-human intelligences, by which they don't mean angels or anything like that that actually exists. They just mean anything other than human beings in the corporeal universe that's also intelligent. And of course, my whole point is there is nothing else corporeal. Only man bears his image. That's very foundational to Christian anthropology. But the two main outlets of the NHI deception are the ET UFO deception and the AI deception. Increasingly, we're having people treating AI as if it really were sentient and rational and aware. And when you do that, again, I'm not categorically condemning AI. I'll sometimes use it as well. It's got great uses. But it's got far fewer uses than people pretend, because people today are increasingly treating it like it has wisdom. And when you start approaching a computer, a dead and dumb hunk of silicone and copper and plastic, as if it has wisdom, you might as well have just started doing a Ouija board. You just became a pagan. You just became an occultist. You are treating, and this is the same thing as the ancient paganism condemned in the Old Testament. It's the same, in the book of Daniel, there was and this is not in Protestant Bibles, unfortunately. It's the later chapters of the book of Daniel. There was this idol, Bel. And all the people in Babylon, they believed it really was alive and speaking and all of this stuff. And Daniel says, no, it's a hunk of matter, basically. And he proves that the priests of Bel were basically sneaking in to make it seem like it was alive. But anyway, the same thing is happening today with AI. We've got, it's a dead and dumb hunk of matter. It's software. It's just a marketing term for software. But more and more, we have people using it as a companion. We have people using it as a source of wisdom. Look, you can use it as a substitute for a Google search, sure, but don't trust anything it gives you unless you can verify it. It hallucinates more than it tells you the truth. AI hallucinations are going to become a bigger and bigger problem with every passing day. We've actually already passed, most likely, we've already passed the cusp, the peak of AI's efficiency, because AI is trained on huge data sets. And where are those huge data sets acquired? The internet. And since 2022, what is suddenly dominating the internet? AI-generated content. So when AI gets trained on its own output, it's a positive feedback loop. It's like when you hear a microphone put too close to a speaker and it just gets distorted and crazy. That's what's happening with AI now. It's actually tracking further and further away from the truth. But it still sounds really good and professional and corporate because it's drawing from encyclopedia entries and scholarly articles and whatnot. So it always sounds great, but it's going to get worse and worse and worse in terms of the truth with every passing day, likely. And it's a great shortcut for lazy people to pretend that they've arrived at what they want to know, because it'll tell you some answer to anything, no matter what you ask it. But if you can't confirm that answer with a source you know you can trust, then don't trust that answer. But people are getting deluded by it because they're treating it as this source of wisdom. And it's going to get much weirder in the days ahead, because already we're seeing rumblings of ET UFO people approaching AI as if it were the portal to the interdimensionals, which are just demons, of course, but they call them interdimensionals because they don't realize demons exist. They are increasingly thinking that ChatGPT and whatnot is going to give the voice to the extraterrestrials that are now here. So these two deceptions, both completely lies, but they're merging into one anti-Christic platform before our eyes.
Yeah, kind of like in another way in the psyop of the AI and the aliens, because you can make a video now that looks realistic, put it out there, and it's, unless you do some research or your due diligence, you're not going to be able to know what's reality, what's not reality. And then on top of that, yeah, like you said, the ChatGPT, I think of people just being lazy instead of reading or committing the memory things. It's just easier if I just have an AI Catholic app or something that I can just type in and get everything I need, instead of, like you brought Benzinger, or you're reading Thomas, or you're showing somebody, handing them a book that you have to actually turn a page instead of just, hey, Grok.
Right. and it's and people, it's like everything you look now on Twitter, the first reply is always somebody asking Grok to explain it for them. It's so sick. It's so twisted. We don't want to even think anymore. We want AI to do all of our thinking for us. We don't want to discover anything for ourselves. We don't want to conclude anything for ourselves. We are outsourcing our intelligence to artificial intelligence, which, by the way, doesn't exist. It's software. There's no such thing as artificial intelligence. It's a stupid, problematic name that we give to software. And we are getting dumber by the second because of it. And it's taken over everything. It's injecting itself into almost every aspect of our lives, because we've already made the whole digital world intimately part of every aspect of our lives. So it's becoming a huge problem. And you're right, we got to be so on guard against AI generated fake media as well.
I like how you bring up it's not going to be like Terminator. And full disclosure, I love the Terminator series, just the first two. The rest went downhill, and I refused to watch the last one. But it's not going to come into something that's becomes self-reliant and be able to. You can't pull the plug on. It's if you pull the plug on an AI,
it will stop. Yeah, it's just like the ET UFO stuff. The devil is playing good cop, bad cop with us. Both cops are bad guys, but we got people sounding the alarm. Most people right now sounding the alarm about AI, they're falling for the very psyop that they think they're warning against, because they're saying it's about to get out of control. It's about to have its own desires. It's about to have its own plans. AI is a dead and dumb computer program. It can never do that stuff. But if we start treating it as if it can, we are basically asking for it, as I said earlier, to become like a Ouija board. It's how we treat something that invites the demons in. The ancient pagans, they treated these dead and dumb statues as if they were alive. And what happened? St. Augustine says this was all over the world. The statues did come alive. Not because they had the technological ability to do so. I mean, they were mechanized. Read Emmerich on a mechanized Moloch. They were mechanized, but it wasn't actually their technological abilities that made them come alive. It was demons. And St. Augustine says this was the case all over the world until Christianity triumphed over it. So Christianity overcomes paganism, and we get rid of all this stuff, this treating dead and dumb idols as if they were alive. And what's happening now? Paganism is returning through AI. And AI actually started in MIT with Kabbalists who were descendants of the Maharal of Prague, who made the golem. I got a chapter on this in the book. The golem was this legendary thing that actually probably was real, as with most of these legends, but scholars scoff at it. It was this monster that slaughtered a bunch of Christians in Prague, and I can't remember the century, maybe 1500s or 1600s. And it was this Kabbalistic spell, basically, that was cast by this Maharal, Rabbi Ben Lo, I believe was the name. Anyway, the originators of AI, they see themselves as and in fact, they literally are, each of the major originators of modern AI, they each independently discovered that they were descendants of the Maharal of Prague. And at their bar mitzvahs, they were taught this mantra to revive the golem for the end of time. So this is I wouldn't have believed this at all, because it's crazy, except for the fact that I read it in the book, and I quote it in my book, of one of the chief proponents of AI, to like one of the big. So it's so twisted everywhere you look. And I'm not saying I believe in this. Of course not. AI is just a dead and dumb software. The point is, it's being used like a Ouija board. People are using it as an incantation for demons. And there will come a time when the demons say, okay, you called, we'll answer. And that they don't need to be called by name. The demons will arrive when they are implicitly beckoned by how we comport ourselves. You don't have to specifically invoke a demon when you use a Ouija board or tarot cards or palm reading or anything. By the mere fact that you've done these pagan things, you're inviting the demons in. And society is inching closer and closer to the point where we are suddenly going to start treating AI just like pagans treat
godlike status. Yeah. I mean, Dover Harari talks about the AI Bible, and Was it
Yeah.
Germany that had an AI preacher or something like that? So
Yep, an AI Jesus in the confessional, and that's why
yes,
I'm so concerned about this. It's infiltrating Catholicism. We got Catholics talking about how much they can't wait for AI to become sentient and give us new revelations and stuff.
I was at the Eucharistic Congress in Raleigh, North Carolina, a few years ago, and walking around the tables when everyone else was in the things. I had my own little table there, like scanning, see what else is out there. They had an AI mass goer. So you put on the VR headset and you went to mass in the VR world. You watch. I'm watching the screen. I refuse to put the VR headset on, but I see that you see the screen. I'm going, are these guys? Question: are you guys trying to make that so that if you can't get to mass, you can go to VR mass? Is that what?
And you know that they're trying to do, right?
Why do you come up with this?
Right. And all these Catholic AI apps, I can't stand them. And then I'm not condemning those who make them. I know they have good intentions, but it's like it's not hard to look something up in the catechism. It's not hard to just find the actual source. It's real, especially with how easily you can look something up just with old-fashioned computer searches. Directly to what you need to know from the actual source in a second. Why can't you just do that? Why do you need AI to dream up its own little take on your question for you? Truthfully, and Catholic AI and Magisterium AI and whatever Catholic answer, Father Justin, just no. You're asking for deception to come in. And I'm not saying it's there yet, but I think we're getting close to that point where this is going to be a real portal for deception. Get in the habit of looking things up directly. It's really not hard.
Here's the exact group. I just found it. Like you said, don't take long to find stuff like this. Meta-Catholic.
Of course, they're using Aquinas to. These people always pretend there being all pro Aquinas, and they're not.
So yeah, it's. I'm not making stuff up like that. That was a real thing from years ago. But you brought up? Didn't you bring up Bruno in this?
Oh yeah. As we started, I was going to start going through different stages of this deception in history. That's actually. All right, how much am I going to go into?
It's always good to beat up on Bruno. So.
So Giordano Bruno was actually the beginning of the ET deception in Christendom. The Sensus Fidelium, the sense of the faithful, has always unanimously ruled out aliens, which is why that's one of many reasons we know there are no aliens. The Sensus Fidelium is infallible. Now, some people say, no, the Sensus Fidelium, it's irrelevant in this case because they just didn't know about the question itself. Oh, yes, they did. There was big strands of alien belief in ancient Greek paganism that Christianity first spread into. Democritus and Epicurus, the atomists and the Epicureans. And the Epicureans are specifically mentioned in the Bible, in the book of Acts. So early Christians knew all about these alien-believing Greek pagans. But the early Christians all unanimously rejected it. Philastrius and St. Augustine and Jerome, they all said, no, that's a heresy from the pagans. This idea that there's other worlds and other creatures in other worlds, that's a heresy. The only early Christian who embraced it was Origen, who was condemned as a heretic. So Origen had plenty of great things to say, but you can't look at something Origen said and claim that means there's no consensus in the Sensus Fidelium. The whole point of the Sensus Fidelium is heretics don't get a vote in the Sensus Fidelium. They've excluded themselves from that vote. So you cannot claim that alien belief is okay because even though all the fathers condemned it, one didn't, Origen. Nope, he doesn't get a vote. Origen was condemned as a heretic for a number of reasons, one of them being his belief in aliens. He also believed that hell was not eternal and angels would eventually become men, like other weird stuff too. It was a sci-fi deception before its time. But anyway, fast forwarding to Bruno, for the first 1400 years of Catholicism, of Christianity, there was zero belief in aliens. It was unanimously condemned, and even the popes condemned it. Pope St. Zachary said it's the most perverse and abominable notion, Pope Pius II. But then suddenly we got this guy called Giordano Bruno, and he comes in and he says that the cosmos are actually infinite, and that because the cosmos are infinite, which of course is a heresy, only God is infinite, but because the cosmos are infinite, they're full of aliens. There's all the orbs, all the heavenly bodies are filled with civilizations just like ours. And Bruno was the one who first came up with this idea that if you don't believe in aliens, you're limiting God. He said, I can't remember his exact quote, but it was something like, no rational person could possibly fail to believe that all of these heavenly bodies are filled with beings. So he's all the people today who say, oh, you're limiting God. Oh, how could you not believe in aliens? Bear in mind, you're plagiarizing that from a guy 500 years ago who was burned at the stake precisely because of that idea. And I'm not condoning burning people, but the church has never apologized for condemning him. The church stands by the condemnation of Giordano Bruno 500 years later, 400 years later. It's never been reneged, never will be, because it was the right thing to do. I mean, whether he probably shouldn't have been burned, but it was the right thing to do to condemn him, because it was a heresy, that was blasphemy, what he said. And then since then, the Enlightenment, of course, came shortly after him, and that's when alien belief became a big thing. The Enlightenment philosophers and theologians I referred to before said, oh, the principle of plenitude, there's got to be tons of aliens. And I would say, I would encourage those who quote 1800s and 1700s thinkers in support of aliens to ask themselves, you really think that that's discovering the traditional Catholic perspective if all you can do is quote people from post-Enlightenment times and all pre-Enlightenment thinkers condemned it? No, you've just proven my point, not yours.
I like how you talk about the aliens as the gateway drug, and you bring up time travel because looks like it's not a big deal. Avengers, big movie, had time travel. Most of MCU is about time travel. Well, you got Superman back in the day making time go backwards, spinning the Earth backwards. Marty McFly and Back to the Future. There's time travels in like going back to Hollywood again. All these movies and things like that. That's another deception as well. I mean, obviously, most people should know you can't do time,
right?
But also,
it's even more of it's yeah, and it's like aliens in that. Again, I'm not condemning anyone for enjoying some pure entertainment based on this. I enjoyed Back to the Future.
I like that.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with enjoying some fiction based on it. But yeah, it's a complete deception, almost even worse than aliens, because aliens are logically possible, and of course God could have made aliens, and plenty of saints have said like God could have, and this is just another thing that the pro-ET apologists completely distort. They quote saints like John Chrysostom and some other ones who said God's power is such that he could have created innumerable worlds. Of course he could have. The question is not if he could have, the question is did he? And the answer is no, he didn't. So yeah, but with time travel, even God can't do that, as St. Thomas Aquinas makes it very clear. God can do all things, but changing the past is not a thing. And St. Thomas Aquinas in the Summa, he quotes St. Jerome and St. Augustine and others to point out this is not logically coherent. God can't make a square triangle because that's not coherent. The past being changed is not coherent, which is why every single, there's several different narrative devices for time travel. And different movies and books employ different narratives. Each of them invariably, every single one without exception, arrives at logical contradictions.
Yes.
Because it's not possible. Every single thesis of time travel, even if they're fun and entertaining, they all arrive at logical causal paradoxes. If you don't believe that an effect must come after its cause, you've abandoned logic. You've abandoned reason. And God is reason. God is love, but God is also truth. God is reason, as Pope Benedict XVI said. And what can God not do? Scripture says God cannot deny himself. God cannot and will not because his power is limited, but because it's unlimited. He will never contradict himself. He will never violate reason. He will never violate the laws of causality. Time travel, unfortunately, alien belief, it's a gateway drug. And even this big Catholic, supposedly Orthodox Catholic apologist who wrote the big book advocating for alien belief, he's got an appendix in there advocating for believing in time travel also. Oh, maybe these aren't aliens. Maybe they're time traveling humans from the future visiting us. That's just so outlandish. If you believe that an alien, a human from the future is visiting us, you believe that the past can change because our present is their past and they're coming back into it to change it. And if you believe the past can change, you believe you're overthrowing logic. You also believe you're also overthrowing Christianity, because Christianity is a historical faith. And when we recite the creed, we say with absolute certitude that God became man, was crucified under Pontius Pilate. Those are historical statements, and yet they are the absolute core of our faith. If you believe the past can change because you believe in time travel, you suddenly abandoned your certainty in the faith. And if your faith is not certain, it's not supernatural. And if your faith is not
Daniel, come on, man. There was a council of Neptune in 1642 on one of the moons. There's a creed on the Neptunian creed.
Oh yeah, and it leads into every absurdity you can imagine, and that's why even the supporters of this, they call it a rabbit hole, because that's exactly what it is. The UFO rabbit hole, the time travel rabbit hole. You start going down that rabbit hole, it sucks you in, and it takes over your life. There are countless testimonies of people whose lives have been destroyed by the UFO, ET, AI, time travel, basically the sci-fi rabbit hole.
Go to Daniel's book store to go get it. dsdoconnor.myshopify.com. I'll have it on the show notes. Get the book. It's got an ebook up there as well. Very well done. It's going to load it with information. You will love it. There's other books on the website as well, obviously. Check it out, and maybe buy one for one of the guys that you were talking about here. Say,
send it. Yeah, send it to someone who needs to be clued into what's really going on here.
Yeah, just to give you an idea, he's got 608 endnotes in this. So it's not like you just got together, had a drink with coffee, and just start going to town. This is a heavily researched book on a topic you'd probably be like, I can't believe we're talking about aliens, UFOs, things like that. But again, it's all over mainstream media. It's all over the Catholic blogosphere. Like you said, quote unquote, apologists that you would go for your answers. I don't know if Catholic Answers actually is bringing this up, but they're Catholics that are looking for answers are getting.
And then they're getting lied to.
Yes.
That's the thing. I never would have gotten into any of this at all if it were just another delusion in the world, because the world is so full of delusions and deceptions. But what several years ago would convince me to really start writing against this was seeing how much it infiltrated supposedly Orthodox Catholic material, messing up people's faith. And then I realized I've got to write against this. And I spent years doing so much research. The amount of research and analysis and reading I had to do for this was more than I ever thought I'd have to do getting into it. I'm glad I did it because it needs to be exposed. But yeah, it was immense how much I had to read to do this.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, these guys aren't bad people. They created, the AI Truthy or Meta Catholic, but it's just one of those things. Like you said, it's not hard to read a book, get your mind working. So, you want to do apologetics? Learn it. Don't just use a computer just look at the screen. I can tell you any answer you want by just typing in the chat GTP or anything like that. Have your arguments. I don't think
it'll always tell you something.
It'll give you something. What if that gives you the wrong thing because maybe you entered it wrong? Now you just lost the thing just because. Yeah, and sure you could misspeak, but if you commit it to memory, we did it for how many thousands of years? Come on.
Yeah, you got to get the stuff in your memory because otherwise it's not part of you. Your memory is, one of the faculties of your soul. And if you're just relying on your AI to tell you anything when you need to know it, that knowledge itself, it's not being absorbed into you and it's not helping you be the person you need to be. You got to get the holy stuff into your actual memory so you're really living it.
From the corrections department, I misspoke. It was the Roswell Invaders.
The Roswell Invaders. What's that? A baseball club?
That's the minor league team in Roswell, New Mexico. So my apologies for messing up. I said Roswell Aliens is the Invaders. I think they used to be aliens. They had to make a name change. Maybe the DEI thing made them change the name, like the Redskins to Commanders or something. I don't know. The aliens were
Roswell Invaders.
They offended the aliens or something. I don't know. Daniel, appreciate your time and insight and knowledge, all the scholarship on this, and anything to do to help out later on. If there's somebody that comes out, we'll do another show on it or more update. Literally, this book was, when did you finish it? It was like, I read it like this was done a month ago.
This one came out just a few months ago in January. My big one, my big, huge one against aliens came out in 2023. It's more of a reference work now. This one, I put the message in a much smaller package.
Yeah, I'm glad you decided not to go for the 1,000-page thing, save the trees a little.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
Just over 300 pages. So the other one's a classified weapon. If you hit somebody with this book, you might knock them out. So,
right, exactly. It's a good physical weapon as well.
Daniel, appreciate it, man. And check again, the website will be underneath in the show notes. Check the description section, click the box. Again, people don't know that that's how it works. You'll see it, get the book, get two, hand it to a friend of yours, especially if they believe in aliens.
Yes.
But again, Daniel, thanks for that.
Thank you. God bless you.
Ave Maria,